So when you picture a private security officer, what's the first image that pops into your head? For most of us, I'm guessing it's probably something straight out of a movie.
Yeah, you know exactly the one I'm talking about. The classic rent-a-cop. The person you see at the mall, maybe looking a little bored, basically just a warm body in a uniform. We kind of see the job as, well, passive, low stakes, maybe even a little bit of a joke. But what if I told you that couldn't be further from the truth? Because when you actually dig into the training materials, like the Texas Level 2 Security Manual this is all based on, you realize the job isn't boring at all. Honestly, it's kind of terrifying. It's this high-stakes world of psychological maneuvering where you're constantly walking a razor-thin legal line. And it all comes down to one massive distinction. They are private security, not the police. And that changes absolutely everything.
So let's start right there, by crushing the single biggest myth about this job. This is the one that creates the most danger, not just for the public, but for the officers themselves. Ready? A security officer is not a peace officer. It sounds so simple, but that legal difference is just massive.
Okay, so here's the core difference in their mission. A peace officer, a cop, a sheriff, they have a sworn duty to enforce all the laws, for all of us, the public. They represent the state. But a security officer? Nope. Their duty is strictly and only to protect the specific people and property of their client. They represent a private company, not the government.
And because of that critical difference, the rules on their uniforms are incredibly aggressive, and it's all designed to avoid any confusion. For example, an officer cannot have the word police anywhere on their uniform. Anywhere. They're also forbidden from using the state seal of Texas or even the Texas flag on their badges, because all those symbols imply they have the state's authority, which they don't.
And listen, this isn't just some nitpicky dress code violation. If a security officer, either through their uniform or their actions, intentionally creates the impression that they are law enforcement, well, they could be committing a felony. So think about that. They have to put on a uniform that projects authority, but at the same time, legally, they have to constantly signal, hey, just so you know, I am not the police.
This really strange contradiction leads us right into the most complex and, frankly, the most dangerous part of their job, the power to arrest. Because if they screw this up, they're the ones who could end up in handcuffs.
Now, when we think of an arrest, we picture handcuffs clicking on, right? That's called an actual arrest. But the training manual spends a ton of time on something much, much trickier, a constructive arrest. And this is when a person submits to your control without you ever touching them.
It kind of sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? How in the world can you arrest someone without any physical contact? Well, the answer is all about perception.
The legal standard is all about what a reasonable person would feel in that moment. So if your words, your commanding presence in that uniform, and your overall demeanor makes someone believe that they are not free to leave, then legally, you have just arrested them. You've deprived them of their liberty, even if all you did was stand in a doorway and put your hand on your belt.
And right here is where the danger really clicks into place. Because they aren't peace officers, a security officer's authority to make an arrest is exactly the same as any private citizen's. The same as yours, the same as mine. It's called a citizen's arrest, and let me tell you, the rules for that are incredibly strict.
Okay, so as a private citizen, you can only make an arrest for a felony or a breach of the peace, like a public brawl, that you personally witness. Now, here's the crucial part. You cannot legally arrest someone for a nonviolent misdemeanor, even if you see it happen. The classic example is shoplifting. If a guard sees somebody pocket a candy bar and tackles them, that guard has just committed assault and false imprisonment. Why? Because a citizen can't arrest for simple theft. The guard just became the criminal.
Let's make this real. Here's a scenario straight from the training manual. An officer on patrol finds a gate that's been pried open at night. Okay, so it's a clear break-in. A little ways off, he sees two guys working on a pickup truck. What does he do?
Well, the bad approach is to go in hot. The officer storms over, maybe grabs one of them by the arm and says, "You aren't going anywhere." Boom! He's just made an illegal arrest because he didn't actually see them break the gate. He's now the one breaking the law. But the better approach? It's the customer service model. He just walks up and asks, "Hey, got car troubles?" It feels weak, but it's brilliant. You start a conversation, get close enough to observe them, maybe smell their breath, see what's in the truck, get a license plate, all without the massive legal liability of detaining them.
Of course, sometimes just talking doesn't work, and using force becomes necessary. But even then, it's not a simple on-off switch. The manual describes it like an elevator or a continuum, where you can go up or down different levels depending on how the situation changes. It all starts at the very bottom with simple officer presence. Just being there in a professional way can solve a lot. From there, you move up to verbal commands, then to empty hand techniques. It's only after that that you get to intermediate weapons like a baton or pepper spray. And even then, these entry-level officers usually can't carry them without a lot of extra training. And way up at the very, very top, the absolute last resort is deadly force.
So, how do you know when to move up or down that elevator? The guiding rule is called the 1+1 theory. The idea is pretty simple. You use a level of force that's just one step higher than the resistance you're facing. So, if someone is just passively resisting, you don't jump straight to your baton. You match and then slightly exceed their level of resistance, just enough to gain control.
But there's one rule in this section that requires almost inhuman levels of restraint. Get this. If someone is screaming insults in your face, calling you every name in the book, you cannot touch them. If you so much as push them away just because of their words, you have just committed assault. You can only use force against a physical threat, never a verbal one.
So all of this really shows that the most important tools for a security officer aren't physical at all. They're not on the duty belt. They're mental. The entire job is about communication, de-escalation, and observation.
The training focuses heavily on what they call verbal judo, using words to redirect someone's energy. They teach officers to avoid these really common traps. For example, has telling an angry person to calm down ever actually worked for you? Nope, never. It just makes them angrier. The whole goal is to always give a person a dignified way out, to give them a choice so they don't feel like they're forced to fight just to save face. In this mental discipline, it extends to the most basic part of the job, writing reports. You cannot write a subjective conclusion like, the man was drunk. Why not? Because you don't actually know that. He could be having a diabetic emergency or have a head injury. Instead, you have to report only the objective, observable facts. The subject had slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, and an odor of alcohol on his breath. See the difference? This all boils down to one single core principle that they teach. You have to be a camera, not a critic. Think about it. A camera just records exactly what it sees and hears, without any judgment. A critic, on the other hand, offers an opinion. And in the legal world, only the camera's footage is going to hold up in court. So the ultimate takeaway here is this incredible tension that's right at the heart of the job. Security officers wear a uniform that just screams power and authority, but their actual legal power is almost non-existent. It's the exact same as yours or mine. Their greatest tools aren't on their belt. They are observation, de-escalation, and knowing the long, long list of things they legally cannot do.
And that leaves us with a final thought. Remember, these officers have the exact same rights to make a citizen's arrest as any private citizen, which of course means you have the same authority they do. So here's a question for you. In a tense situation, are you sure that your body language isn't performing a constructive arrest? Because if you're not absolutely 100% sure, the smartest thing to do is often to just keep walking.